I'm 89 years old, and I spent 41 years as a hospice nurse and grief counselor, and I'm going to tell you 5 things about what the end of life actually looks like that nobody, not your doctor, not the pamphlets in the waiting room, not the well-meaning people who love you, will tell you directly, not because they do not know, because they are afraid that telling you will frighten you, and I am here to tell you that the not telling frightens people far more than the truth does. The truth, in my experience, is almost always a relief. The not telling is what makes people feel alone in the dark. I have been in the room when life ended more times than I can count. I have held the hands of people in their last hours and listened to the last things they said and watched the last expressions on their faces, and I have come to understand, with a specificity and a peace that only comes from that kind of sustained proximity, what this transition actually is and what it actually asks and what it actually feels like for the person going through it and for the people watching. I buried my husband James in 2008 after 44 years of marriage, and after 2 years of watching him navigate exactly the territory I had spent decades helping other people navigate, which is a particular kind of education that I would not trade for anything. I buried my son Robert in 1996. He was 44 years old, and the illness that came from a war that had been technically over for 20 years took him in 6 months. I lost my sister Frances and my closest colleague Vera, who understood this work the way that only someone who does it can understand it. I have had enough personal acquaintance with loss to speak about it from both sides of the professional distance. What I want to tell you today is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to prepare you. There is a difference between those two things that is the whole of my professional life, and I want to give you the preparing without the frightening, which requires the kind of honesty that the medical system, for all its gifts, often struggles to provide. Here are 5 signs that someone may be approaching the end of their life, not as a sentence, as information, because information is the thing that allows people to make the choices that matter while the choices are still available. Let me tell you who I am before you decide whether you are willing to hear this. I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, the youngest of 4 children, in a family where my mother was a practical woman who believed that the truth, however hard, was always kinder than the comfortable evasion. She said, "Dorothy, a person who knows what is coming can walk toward it. A person who doesn't know is just wandering." I thought she was talking about practical things, weather, finances, the kind of planning that sensible people do. She was talking about everything, including this. I started nursing in 1962. I moved into hospice work in 1978. After years of acute care work left me with the persistent feeling that I was helping people survive things without helping them live through them, and that the two were not the same thing. Hospice work was different. Hospice work asked something different from me and from my patients and from their families. It asked for a kind of presence and a kind of honesty that the rest of medicine did not always require, and that I turned out to be suited for in ways I had not expected. I retired in 2003. I have had 22 years since retirement to think about everything I observed and to place it alongside my own life and my own losses, and to arrive at the understanding I am going to share with you today. The moment this whole conversation crystallized for me was not in a professional context. It was a Sunday afternoon in September of 2007, a year before James died, when I was sitting with him in our living room, and I looked at him with the eyes I had used for 25 years of hospice work, and I saw something I had seen in hundreds of patients and had never expected to see in him, and I had a choice in that moment. I could put the professional eyes away and pretend I had not seen it, or I could use what I knew and use it in the service of the time we had left. I used what I knew. And the year that followed, the hardest year of my life, was also, because of what I knew and what I chose to do with it, one of the most complete years of my life. We said what needed saying. We did what needed doing. We were present for each other in ways that would not have been possible if I had chosen not to see what I saw. That is why I am telling you this today, because what I knew allowed me to live that year fully rather than waste it in denial. And what I am about to tell you can do the same for you or for someone you love. Here is the thing I need you to sit with before I tell you the 5 signs, because without this, the signs will be frightening rather than useful, and frightening is not what I'm trying to do. Our culture has a profound and very specific difficulty with the end of life. We talk around it. We use euphemisms for it. Passing, losing someone, going to a better place, that protect us from the directness of the fact, while simultaneously preventing us from engaging with it clearly enough to prepare. We treat the approach of death as a failure, medical failure, personal failure, some failure that with the right intervention might have been avoided, rather than as the final chapter of every human story ever told, without exception since the beginning of human life on this earth. And that treatment, that refusal to look directly at what is coming, costs people the one thing that is most precious in the final chapter, time. Not time in the abstract, specific, usable, irreplaceable time with the people who matter, time for the conversations that need to happen, time to complete the things that feel unfinished, time to say goodbye with intention rather than having goodbye arrive before anyone was ready. The paradox that I have lived with for 41 years is this. The people who are most afraid of talking about death are the people who most suffer from not having talked about it. And the people who are most willing to look at it clearly, to see the signs, to name them, to prepare, are the people who use their remaining time most fully and who leave the people who love them with the gift of a good ending rather than the wound of a sudden one. The signs I am about to describe are not verdicts. They are information, and information, received with courage and used with love, changes everything. The first sign is a significant and sustained withdrawal from the activities and relationships that previously gave life its texture and its pleasure. I am not talking about a bad week. I am not talking about the normal fluctuation of energy and engagement that comes with age and with illness. I am talking about a consistent, progressive, and, this is the part that matters, seemingly peaceful withdrawal. A person who used to care deeply about their garden and no longer goes to look at it. A person who used to call their friends every week and has quietly stopped. A person who used to watch the news and follow the world and has become, without apparent distress, indifferent to it. The word I want you to hear is peaceful. because what I observed in hundreds of patients over 41 years is that this withdrawal is not depression, though it can look like depression from the outside. It is something else. It is the body and the spirit beginning the natural process of releasing attachment, not from loss or grief or failure of will, but from a deep interior knowing that the attachment is no longer the point, that the direction has changed. I watched James do this in the fall of 2007. He stopped reading the newspaper, which he had read every morning for 50 years. He stopped following his college football team, which had been a genuine passion for decades. He sat more. He looked out the window more. He was not sad, and this was the thing that I recognized and that a person without my background might have missed. He was at peace with a quieting that the people around him were not at peace with. When you see this in someone you love, the peaceful withdrawal, the gentle releasing, it is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is a sign that something is being completed. And the most loving thing you can do is not try to restore the engagement, but to sit with them in the quieting, to be present for the completion rather than trying to reverse it. The second sign is a change in the relationship with food and water, specifically a genuine and sustained decrease in appetite and thirst that the person does not experience as suffering. This is one of the most consistently misunderstood signs in end-of-life care, and it is misunderstood in a way that causes real distress to the people watching. Families push food. They worry about nutrition. They interpret the not eating as giving up, as a problem to be solved, as something the right meal or the right supplement might correct. And in doing so, they turn the natural completion of the body's nutritional needs into a source of conflict and guilt and unnecessary suffering. What I learned in 41 years of hospice work is that as the body approaches the end of its work, it genuinely requires less fuel. Not because it is giving up, because it is doing different work. The systems that required calories and hydration to run at full capacity are running at a different capacity now, and forcing additional input into a system that is winding down can actually cause discomfort rather than relief. The person who is no longer hungry is not suffering from their lack of hunger. They are at peace with it. The suffering is in the people watching who interpret the not eating through the lens of the living rather than through the lens of what is actually happening. If someone you love has stopped eating much, if they take a few bites and seem satisfied, if they sip water without much interest, if food has lost its pull, sit with them rather than pushing. Offer small things. Accept no as an answer, and understand that their body may know something that your love is finding it difficult to accept. The third sign is an increase in sleep and a change in the quality of consciousness, a kind of drifting, a movement between waking and sleeping that becomes more fluid than it used to be. James slept most of the last 4 months of his life. Not the sleep of illness exactly, not the sleep of pain or medication or a body fighting something. A different kind of sleep, a sleep that looked to my eyes like the deliberate conservation of something, like the body preparing for a long journey by resting thoroughly before it. He also, in those months, had what I can only describe as a fluid relationship with consciousness. He would be present and clear, and then he would drift, not into sleep exactly, but into somewhere else. He would have conversations with people who were not in the room. He would say things that did not make linear sense, but that had a coherence of their own, a kind of interior logic that suggested he was engaged in something real, even when what he was saying was not something I could follow. I want to say something about this that the medical literature addresses clinically, but that I want to address humanly. The people who are not in the room, the people that the dying speak to and reach toward and seem to find comfort in, are almost always, in my 4 decades of observation, people who have already died. Parents, siblings, old friends, people who are gone from the world the watcher inhabits, but who seem, from everything I have observed, to be present in the world the dying person is moving toward. I am not asking you to believe anything in particular about what that means. I am asking you to not be frightened by it, to understand it as a sign of transition rather than a sign of confusion, to let the person speak to whoever they are speaking to without correction or redirection. Because what they are doing, in my experience, is moving towards something with the help of people who have already made the journey, and that is a comfort rather than a cause for alarm. The 4th sign is a change in breathing, specifically the appearance of irregular breathing patterns that may include periods of no breathing at all, followed by resumed breathing. This is called Cheney-Stokes respiration, and it is one of the clearest physiological signs that the body is in its final process. It is deeply uncomfortable to witness. A person breathes shallowly, then more deeply, then seems to stop, and the person watching holds their own breath in the watching, and then the breathing resumes, and this cycle continues for hours or days. What I want to tell you about this, what nobody tells the families sitting in those rooms, is that the person experiencing it is almost certainly not in distress. The brain, in the final stages of the body's closing down, adjusts its response to the carbon dioxide levels that trigger breathing, and the result is this irregular pattern that looks, from the outside, like struggling. It is not struggling. It is the body managing its own ending in the most efficient way available to it. The distress in that room is the distress of the witnesses, and I say that not to minimize it. The distress of the witnesses is real, and it is important, and it deserves to be held, but to separate it from what the person in the bed is experiencing, which is, in the vast majority of cases I observed, a process rather than a suffering. Sit with them. Hold their hand if they allow it. Talk to them. Hearing is the last sense to go, and many people in this state can still hear what is said around them, even when they cannot respond. Say what needs saying, not for them necessarily. They may already be past the needing of it. For you. Because the words said in that room are the words you will carry out of it, and they matter. The 5th sign is the most difficult to name and the most important to understand, and it is the one that nobody in the medical literature describes adequately because it does not show up on any scan or in any blood work. The 5th sign is a quality of completion, a sense which I learned to recognize after years of being in those rooms, that the person has finished the interior work of their life, that they have arrived somewhere, resolved something, released something, made peace with something, and that the arriving has a completeness to it that is different from what came before. Some people arrive there through a specific conversation, a reconciliation, a forgiveness asked and given, a thing finally said that had been unsaid for years. Some people arrive there through a private interior process that the people around them can only observe from the outside, but the arrival, when it comes, is visible. There is a settling, a stillness that is not the stillness of incapacity, but the stillness of completion. James arrived there on a Thursday morning in March of 2008. I know it was a Thursday because I had been keeping a journal and because I wrote it down, not in the clinical language I might have used in a professional context, but in the language of a wife who had been watching her husband move toward this moment for 2 years. He is finished, not in the way that means done, but in the way that means complete. He died 4 days later. I was with him. I was glad to be with him. And I was glad, I have been glad every day since, that I knew what I was watching, and that I had used the knowing to be present for every day of the 2 years before it. I want to stop and talk to you directly because I know that some of you have been watching this for someone specific, not for yourself. For someone whose face appeared in your mind in the first few minutes of this video and has not left. You are watching this because you are seeing something in someone you love and you do not have the language for what you are seeing, and you are afraid of the language you might find if you looked for it directly. I want to give you that language, not to frighten you, to help you use the time that is still available. If you recognize someone in these 5 signs, if a face came to you with one of these descriptions, please hear this. The time you have with that person right now is some of the most important time available to you, not because it is running out, though it may be, because they are in a place that calls for a different quality of presence than ordinary time does. They are doing the most significant thing a human being ever does, and they are doing it better with a witness than without one. Be the witness. Show up, not with solutions, not with attempts to reverse what is natural and complete, with presence, with the willingness to sit in the same room and let the room be what it is, to say the things that matter, to listen to the things they say, even when the things they say do not make the kind of sense that the living require. You will not regret the showing up. In 41 years of hospice work, I never once had a family member tell me they wished they had spent less time with the person at the end. Not once. I will tell you plainly where I am. I am 89 years old, and I know what I know about the signs, and I observe myself with the same eyes I have turned on patients for 4 decades, and what I see is someone who still has work to do and time to do it in. Not unlimited time, real time. The 5 signs I described are not present in me in the way they were present in the patients I described them from. That is an honest assessment, not a comfortable one. I am not capable of comfortable ones after 41 years of being in those rooms. What I think about is the people watching this who are at the beginning of this conversation about someone they love, who are in the year I was in with James in 2007, the year before the ending, when the signs are beginning, but the time is still present and the choices are still available. That year is a gift if you know what you have. It is the year for the conversations that should not wait and the presents that should not be deferred, and the words that should be said while the person can still hear them. Do not waste it in denial. Use it in love. Here is what I want you to do, not eventually. This week, go to the person who came to your mind during this video, not to have the medical conversation, not to name what you are seeing or to prepare them for anything, just to be with them, to sit in the room, to ask them one real question about their life, and then listen all the way through to everything they say. If there is something you have been meaning to say to them, something real, something that has been waiting for a better time, say it this week. There is no better time. There is only this week and then the next one. And the next one is not guaranteed in the way this one is. And if they want to talk about where they are, if they bring it up, if they try to have the conversation that the people around them have been avoiding, let them. Be the person who does not look away. It is the greatest gift available to a person who is doing this most human of things. I held hands for 41 years in those rooms, and what I know from all of it is that no one should have to do this alone, and no one has to. If the people who love them are willing to stay, stay. The most loving thing you can do for someone near the end is refuse to pretend it isn't happening. Stay in the room. Be real. Let them know they are not alone in it.